Comedy Album Book Club, Volume 12, Eddie Murphy, Comedian. This is Matt, the engineer and co-producer of the podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in to a year of episodes. Before we start, I just want to warn you, there are some audio issues with the first 15 minutes. Please be prepared for some pops, but after that first 15 minutes, the audio does clear up, and the rest of the show is fine. Thank you again for your year of support, and we look forward to sharing our love of comedy for many more years to come. Enjoy.
I think so, yes. Excellent. Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Volume 12 of Comedy Album Book Club. I got a flip, wham there. That's awesome. This is the podcast show where we listen to an influential, loved, hated, or rarely heard comedy album, and a panel of comedians, actors, writers, or comedy fans talk about it. This episode marks 1 year of live episodes. This is episode number 12. Hence the air horns. Paid extra for that.
I'm so glad you got the guy from Police Academy on this.
Yes, Michael Winslow is our special guest today.
Don't get me started.
Before listening further, please do, as we have done here at Toronto Social Capital Theatre, and give a listen to Eddie Murphy's 1983 album, Comedian. Edward Regan Murphy was born in Brooklyn in 1961. He debuted on Saturday Night Live in 1980 at the age of 19. He rocketed to fame instantly. His first film was the 1982 comedy 48 Hours with Nick Nolte. That Christmas, Nolte was too sick to host SNL, so Murphy took over and has the distinction of being the only SNL cast member to host the show while still being a member of the cast. Eddie had a string of hits in the 80s with Trading Places, co-starring fellow SNL alum Dan Aykroyd, The Golden Child, Beverly Hills Cop, a sequel to Beverly Hills Cop, and Coming to America, in which he started his habit of playing multiple characters in the same movie, which he also did in Vampire Brooklyn, Nutty Professor, and Norbit. He only did 2 comedy albums. His first came out in 1982, just called Eddie Murphy. It went gold and received a Grammy nomination. He was 21 at the time. And just so you know what his competition was that year, it was also against The Great White North from the Mackenzie Brothers, Steve Martin's The Steve Martin Brothers, A Place for My Stuff by George Carlin, and the winner, of course, was Richard Pryor with Live on the Sunset Strip. Pretty good company there. The album we listened to tonight was from 1983 called Comedian, which, of course, turned into the HBO special Delirious. And he won. He won Best Comedy Album at the 1984 Grammy Awards. And it's pretty crazy who he beat out that year. Some of the people he cites as influences: Robin Williams, Joan Rivers, Bill Cosby, and Monty Python. We'll talk about maybe if we think he deserved the Grammy or not. Moving right along. Eddie Murphy is only 57 years old. Feels like he's been around forever, but he was so young when he started Saturday Night Live that, he's only 57. And apparently has a couple of movies in the works that we'll talk about a little bit later. In the meantime, I'd like to welcome my first guest. He's a comedian, writer, teacher, actor, improviser. Please welcome a friend of mine for 23 years, Nigel Downer.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? Thank you. I got more.
Well, oh, this is great. Yeah, Michael Winslow, you've aged so well.
My favorite.
How are you, sir?
I'm great, man. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to see you, dude.
You too, man. It's been a
great to
while.
see you. It has been a long time.
Yeah, we've run into each other every few years, but not with any regularity. And,
It's true.
and we never change.
No. Nope. Hard stop.
As long as we think so. Yeah. Also, to your left, we have your friend and mine, comedian and TV writer, known for such things as Inspector Gadget, Degrassi, and the Beaverton, Mr. Ian McIntyre.
Wham.
Okay.
I can't do it as good. I'm sorry.
No. It's a black thing, man.
Yeah,
Come
like
on.
a-
Only me and Nigel
It's a
can do
talent
it.
thing, actually.
No,
Yeah.
I like the black thing part.
Yeah, only me and Nigel can do it. It's a
A
black
wet
thing.
horn kind of.
23 years, man. A bit rubbed off, you know? No. What, am I not allowed to say that?
Hey, man, considering the album, that's not going to be the most messed up thing
No.
in this podcast.
That is tame. And then to Ian's left, we have comedian and actress who has starred in such things as Schitt's Creek and Bad Santa 2. Please welcome Heather Sanderson.
Hello.
Who I've known for 63 minutes, I think.
63 minutes.
Yeah.
I met you once when I was a receptionist at Chorus Entertainment, and I fangirled about you being on Ready or Not.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Just about 10 years ago, you know.
That
no big
is
deal.
about
Yeah,
10
yeah.
years ago, yeah. Wow, I'm
Yeah.
touched that you remember that.
You were the
That's
basketball
great.
guy that dated Busy.
Wow. And context.
Deep cuts. Yes, my name in that show was Ernie Lipnett.
Forget about Eddie Murphy. This is now a Ready or Not podcast. This is all
can
I
do
want to
that.
talk about.
Surprise! Okay, let's get into it. So,
Yeah.
ready or not? Okay, so Nigel, I wanted you to be on the podcast for a while.
To talk about Ready or Not, because I did go to university with not Ready, but her friend. I believe her name
Amanda.
was Jennifer. Amanda, yeah. I went to university with her. We were
Laura
fast friends.
Bertram.
Yeah,
Laura Bertram,
Laura.
yeah.
Yeah. I went to school there. It was great.
Cool. Yeah.
University of Guelph. Shout out to the Griffins. I'm sorry, you were saying?
Who cares?
It's contagious.
It literally is. Cool. So, are you still in touch with
No.
Laura?
She,
I didn't think so, considering you were calling her by her TV name.
Yeah, that's how I met her, because I got excited about her, and I was like, oh my god! She's like, that's not my real name.
I
was
like that you
cool.
called the other one Ready.
Yeah, the other one was always ready for me.
Like it's a cop show, and like Ready or Not is their two names.
Yeah.
Jennifer Reddy and Amanda Knott are.
Wait,
Dun, dun.
you guys didn't see that one? I mean, that's what I was watching.
I saw.
Yeah,
Law and
thank
Order,
you.
Ready or Not.
It's
Unit.
time for a reboot.
Ian, we're starring in it, by the way. Great, let's do this.
Unfortunately,
I actually am
Yeah.
friends with Busy on Facebook, and I was in a commercial with her, so I could easily hook it up.
So I'm talking about.
Yeah, is that all it takes, just to have someone on Facebook to greenlight a show
Exactly.
in
Yeah,
Canada?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
talking about.
Fair
Just
enough.
wave at them, nudge, poke, whatever you do. Yeah.
Now that we're talking about this, after seeing Cobra Kai, I kind of really want this to happen.
it can work.
Yes.
It'd be a great cop show. Ready or not? I dig it.
Yeah.
Anywho, so yes,
Yeah.
we'll do a separate episode all about this. But I wanted you to be on the Comedy Album Book Club podcast, which is what this podcast is. And you mentioned Eddie Murphy, and we weren't sure what album to do. And I thought this one would be good because it's the one that really got the most attention. The first album did okay, but this one he won the Grammy for against some pretty huge competition, and it was when he was sort of at his height after the movie came out. So you weren't sure if you've even heard this album, correct?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, you've seen Delirious, which a lot of this is from.
Yeah, I didn't even I didn't make the correlation. Like I didn't know that
Right.
it's essentially like Delirious is the good stuff from the best stuff from
Yeah,
this album. I
that's
had no
right.
idea. So I'm glad it worked out. For after the first 15 minutes,
It's a little problematic, isn't it? Yeah,
man.
it's
maybe not
dated.
15 minutes, but it felt that way. But no, it was good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah?
I enjoyed going back to it again. It's one of those things where we, when you watch these movies or albums, and there's the reason why I put movies first is because there's all these little things that we always say in society still, like all these little jokes, whether they're phrases or characters that we all know because of something that we really loved. And I just forgot over time that Eddie Murphy had so many of them at that time,
Right.
that have lasted the test of time that he's also put into his movies. So it was a nice little refresher. It was nice to go back to it.
It's funny for me when I hear that ice cream bit. Like that's a thing that just once in a while when someone brings up ice cream, someone goes into that bit and he invented that.
100%.
And he's got these kind of catchphrases and moments that we don't always attribute to the creator,
For
but
sure.
he had so many memorable moments like that. Ian, you're a huge fan of Eddie at this time, right? You were watching Saturday Night Live, and I guess
Yes, I was watching Saturday Night Live when I was 2 years old.
which you're 2 years old. It's a bit before you, but you went back, and this was you're a fan of his this era.
I mean, I loved Delirious growing up. Bonkers problematic now. Actually, I remember a tweet someone had a couple of years ago. that was like, the United States Constitution is exactly like Eddie Murphy's Delirious. The parts that hold up amazingly well, and the parts that don't, super don't.
Yo, that's so true, though.
That's great. Who said that?
I forget. I tried even looking it up right now. I can't find the original
That's really
tweet. It's
funny.
someone else's joke, but I'll take it now. But no, like
McIntyre.
I will never forget being 13 years old on summer vacation, hanging out in my parents' basement. My friend Mark Brenton came over. He's also a tiny 13-year-old boy, and he was like, "I just saw this movie called Delirious," and I was like, "I don't know at all what that is," and I hadn't even heard of Eddie Murphy then. And my friend Mark Brenton proceeded to, because he's even now like a weirdly good mimic. He basically did half the movie for me verbatim in my parents' basement. And if you're not picturing a 13-year-old ginger boy with buck teeth doing all of this material. And I think it's the hardest I've ever laughed in my life.
Wow.
Like, I laughed until I physically hurt and had to beg him to stop so I could, honestly, so I could catch
And
my
this
breath.
is in the mid-90s, too, right?
This would have been like 92 or so.
Yeah,
something like that.
okay.
Somewhere around there.
Cool.
And I was like, I have to see this now. And we went down to the shady video store down the street from our house called Gigantic Video that would rent restricted movies to children.
Oh yeah, they all did.
Yeah,
that.
I was like, we're all on board with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're all like, yeah.
I rented
Like they
porn
should.
when I was 10. I'm not even lying. Bikini
Okay,
car wash.
touche.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We couldn't get away with that. But
We watched Caligula at my 5th birthday, I think. Yeah. It's a big hit.
But we rented this movie probably once a month.
Really?
We were obsessed with it. We thought it was the funniest thing in the world. I had it memorized when I was a teenager. And watching it where I'm like, I see why I loved all of this to death, and some of it I just so cannot get on board with anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah, part of it is a product of its time, and part of it is being a goofy 10-year-old who just laughs at bad words and making fun of other people and not really understanding.
Making fun of other people, hurting people.
Yes, hurting people, yes.
great
Hurting
pastime.
people's
But it
fun.
was like in the 90s, all of this stuff still would fly.
Right.
Like there was
Oh,
nothing
yeah,
in this
yeah.
album that you'd watch where people really objected.
Right. At least for a rated R comedy. Like, you wouldn't do it on Saturday Night Live or something, but
Of course.
rated R kind of, it was still anything goes at this point. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Heather? What was your introduction to Eddie, or did you hear this album before or watch Delirious?
I think my introduction to Eddie was probably watching old SNL things, so like Gumby and that kind of stuff. But then also, I mean, I'm a 90s kid, born in 83. I was actually born 1 week before this album was recorded.
Oh, nice.
Because I discovered that this was like August 17th or something, 83. I'm August 8th, 83. So that's kind of cool. But birthday's next week. Yeah, so, but then also, I mean, I did nothing on the weekends or in the summertime when I was a kid. So obviously I saw all the Nutty Professor movies and
Right.
all that bullshit. So
I still laugh
a
at
big
that
fan of
movie,
that.
man. That movie's so dumb and so
it's
funny.
so dumb
He's
and so funny.
in it.
Hercules! That's Hercules, right? That's the
Yeah, Hercules. Yeah.
So many fat jokes, but I love it still. I don't care.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah. So that was my introduction to him.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I love that you mentioned Gumby because when I think of my favorite characters he did, it was usually a type of. I mean, he was an amazing impressionist and was great at really nailing, as you were saying before, Ian, about the minutia of someone he was imitating. Like with Bill Cosby, he would just find the smallest little idiosyncrasies and show them to us. But I love the stuff where he would do a character that wasn't really based on something real. I mean, Gumby was a real character, but he just totally did his own spin on it. He sounded nothing like Gumby in the animated shorts. He just made him this badass guy. I'm Gumby, damn it.
Yeah, it was like this old Hollywood angry guy.
Yeah, it was like he was supposed to be. He had like a New York Jewish thing going on too. Like I'm Gumby, damn it, like that
It's
kind
like
of
with
thing.
like the delis that they hung out.
Yeah. It was ridiculous, and also his amalgamation of Little Richard and Richard Simmons. Oh, that was amazing. Little Richard Simmons,
Simmons.
like just
I mean,
ridiculous.
it wasn't really. It's a sketch
it's
where he
low-hanging
does
fruit, but-
Little Richard, and then halfway through he becomes Richard Simmons.
Oh, that sounds
Right,
great.
right.
I love
There's like no real melding of it.
But his energy sold it.
Amazing.
I mean, you know,
Oh,
he
it's
committed
a huge
to
sketch.
everything going on there.
And one of the only SNL sketches I can ever remember seeing where someone went out and played with the audience, like the studio audience, like they were part of the sketch, Like he starts like going out into the audience and doing bits with them and making jokes, and like they turn up the house lights on the audience, which you never see them do on that show. But
No.
it's like such a sketch comedy. Like obviously Second City does that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also love the musical stuff he did. I mean, he went on to make. He did more music albums, I think, than comedy albums. Actually, he did.
Really?
Which is weird.
well, he
'cause
did.
We all only know that one song. Yeah.
Party All the Time.
Yeah, that's right.
Produced
Yeah.
by Rick James.
Of course.
Hit
Wow.
number 26 on the Billboard 200 and number 17 on the top R&B hip hop albums that year.
Wow. What year was
Crazy.
that? What year was that?
85. Yeah,
Thankfully,
the album.
from Dave Chappelle, him and Rick James had a lot of hangouts.
Yeah.
I was just gonna drop that Dave Chappelle like reference. I was just gonna do
I'm
it,
so
and it's
sorry.
like, no, that's fine. I'm glad you can take it. It's just one of those things where you know that Chappelle, like he looked up to Murphy, like you just
Oh,
know
yeah.
that it was just one of those things, and that's where that came from, right?
Totally.
I was also gonna mention because we're talking about Eddie Murphy's skill at singing, it was interesting to me as we listened to the album. His Mr. T was average at very, very best, and we get what the context was
Sure.
of the joke, right? Kind of like the Gumby thing for me.
Yeah.
But then once he started to do the Michael Jackson and the Elvis, like he literally and the
Unbelievable.
James Brown,
He became them.
Yeah, and that's the one part where I really was like, oh, okay, this is the other amazing talent that this guy has. Like an
Yeah.
actual talent that. It goes beyond the impression, and he's done
Right.
he's done the work. You know what I mean?
But it's almost
For
a
that time.
throwaway for him. Like it's almost
For
like one or
sure.
two lines and it's gone. Like he doesn't rely on being an impressionist. I don't think
sure.
of him as an impressionist, but
No.
he's amazing at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
From this period, I kind of think of him as that. Like his SNL
Yeah.
stuff was full of impressions, and
Right.
I mean, there was those 2 years that he was on the show that he basically was the show.
Yeah.
Like he did anything he wanted on there, and he was half of any broadcast that they did. And God, I mean, like I know he did Michael Jackson on the show a lot, and James Brown, obviously.
Yeah,
And
James Brown,
I,
for sure.
I guess a lot of the same impressions from this album, but yeah.
Was there a lot of resentment? Is that well documented from other cast members?
Like the Live from New York book. Have you guys read that one? The
No,
Power
no,
and
I haven't.
History of SNL. They talk a lot about at the time that people were really burned that he was just so popular that they kept making him the show. Because it was 1980. It was the first year where the original cast had left and Lorne Michaels had left. And they turned the show over to this woman from NBC named Jean Doumanian who ran it, who's like much derided, but then people also say like she was sort of sabotaged. And but the cast had like Tim Kazurinsky and Julia Louis-Dreyfus in it at the time.
I was just gonna say,
Like,
was Elaine on that?
Right.
The
Yeah,
back then, yeah.
solid people, but just
Yeah.
no one was biting. And then halfway through the year, the one thing that like everyone has to admit that Jean Doumanian was a genius was that no one wanted to hire Eddie Murphy, and she's like, I think this kid's great,
Wow.
and I'm going to put him on the show, and like immediately was a fan favorite.
Right.
And like you said, that one time that he hosted, because Nick Nolte was sick, and by sick he was fucked up at Studio 54.
Yeah.
Like Eddie Murphy went out and just ran the table of the show.
Well, and when his opening line was "Welcome to the Eddie Murphy Show," which kind of is like, wow. Like,
yeah, Live from
yeah.
New York. It's the Eddie
Yeah.
Murphy show.
Yeah.
That's an aggressive move.
That is an aggressive move.
Apparently
Yeah.
the cast was super pissed.
I bet. Yeah.
I believe that.
Not planned.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can't imagine what he must have felt at that point. Like just top of the world, I guess. Like,
Well, that was the thing. I
just
think he was
owned
just
the
like,
show.
it's undeniable that I am succeeding, so
Yeah.
I don't care what you all think of me.
Yeah.
But that like mentality, if that was,
Mm.
if you think if that was his trajectory, if that's what he was thinking, even to think that at that age, like and just
Yeah.
to come out and just like go in hot and burn the place down.
Well,
and
it's a
walk away.
dangerous age to be that successful, right?
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
be
Hell
told
yeah.
you're amazing and you can't do anything wrong
Hell
and
yeah.
be a millionaire. I
Yeah,
mean, you know,
on a show that's that popular
yeah,
and that is
every week
Yeah,
being
every
the
week,
hot
yeah.
topic every single Monday at the water cooler. Like, yeah,
Good
that's
for him, man.
Oh yeah.
Well,
no,
yeah,
he
sure.
deserves it.
It's-
SNL wouldn't be on the air anymore if Eddie Murphy hadn't saved it.
You think, huh?
He absolutely single-handedly saved that show. It would have been canceled in like 1982.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's
that's a
nuts.
popular opinion. Yeah. It's interesting to me that he never went back as a host or like to do a cameo or anything.
He didn't,
It's-
eh?
No. He came back for, was it the 40-year thing?
Yeah.
In 2000, wait, what year
there
was
was
it?
15 or
always-
something? No.
15, I think.
Yeah, 2015, yeah. He came back and he was going to do a sketch as Bill Cosby. Well, that's what they wanted him to do. But he said he didn't want to kick a man when he's down. So they got, I forget,
Keenan
to do it. And so Eddie Murphy just came out and said, "Hey, glad to be here. It's been a long time."
Yeah.
And it was sort of awkward.
If
and
Eddie
weird
Murphy had come out and not only done Cosby again, but done a super hard slam on Bill Cosby at that time, because I think the joke was like, oh yeah, on Celebrity Jeopardy, they always have the category that's potent potables.
Yeah.
And it was like, we have a video clue, and it was supposed to be him mixing a drink for someone.
Right.
And he was like, this is the drink that I made. And then they like shut it down immediately.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Hard stop on that one.
And it would have killed, and it would have made him.
I would have run out of my
comedy
house
star again.
screaming.
Yeah.
Just to see him come back and do sketch comedy again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's a shame. Because I don't know if he's still got it in him. I mean, his movies have sort of gone down in quality, but I don't know if he's not.
I'm gonna stop you right there.
Okay.
Not because your comment isn't accurate, but because you didn't say it with enough conviction for me. His movies have drastically gone down in quality. Let's call a spade a spade. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, hey, we get it,
Fair
man.
enough.
He's great. He commits to it, but like they got bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They got
Yeah.
like the choices that he was starting to make. I was like, come on, bro. Like,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them
like,
are easy family movie paychecks, like Sandler has done, and a lot of people
100%.
have done. But yeah, even earlier on, like Pluto Nash, like what was he thinking with that? Like,
it just seems like after Nutty Professor, he just kept chasing that like
That Norbit thing.
Yeah, like big budget family comedy thing.
Yeah.
Dr. Dolittle.
Actually, when I'm saying Norbit, for some reason I'm automatically thinking, wait, is that Martin Lawrence? No, Martin Lawrence did Big. Who's Martin?
Martin Lawrence was Big Mama's
Big Mama's
Big
House.
Mama's House.
Oh man,
Who's the one that wears the bikini
as the
that
one
dresses
black
like
cast member? I should
Derek?
know this, and I don't. I'm not. I don't watch those.
Yeah, Norbit is Eddie Murphy.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because then I'm also thinking of Tracy Jordan on 30 Rock.
Oh, don't do this. Don't
Look at
do
these
this.
white people sweat.
Yeah,
man.
don't
They
do
were like
this.
parodies of those movies.
What about that
do this
other
now.
one? Yeah.
Don't do this
Eddie
now.
Murphy and Martin Lawrence did do a movie together. The one where they escaped from prison.
Yeah, it's called Life.
Life.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
There you
Shout
go.
out to
See?
Casey and JoJo that did the lead track for that. Yo, you want to talk R&B? Like,
I love
I got
Casey
that.
and JoJo. Grade 9 school dances.
Life. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Life. You know what? Don't worry about it. You understand. You get it.
Wait, that wasn't Desiree, right? I think you were singing Desiree there.
Yeah, well,
Life
for
by
sure.
Desiree. Yeah. Desiree.
Desiree.
Go ahead.
No, you keep going on this.
Are we talking about the movie Life? Is that what we're
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about? with
yeah,
Eddie
that's
Murphy
the one
and
that
Martin
Eddie
Lawrence?
Murphy-
Yeah,
yeah,
I've never
Martin
seen it. Is it worth?
No, man. I mean,
Hard no for Nigel.
what do you want me to tell you? You know what I mean? Like,
But how could you go wrong with that team up? You know what I mean?
you couldn't when it came out, but I mean,
Right.
as soon as it dropped and it came out, it's like cool that we did. The whole thing was predicated on having those two powerhouses together, right? Because Martin
So they
Lawrence
didn't
was
bother
like,
putting any other work into it. We got them. We're done.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's and just like Coming to America and a lot of the other movies at the time where they were heavy on the makeup to make people look older to
Right.
move on. Life was about that, right? Because
Right.
it's about these two guys that are in jail for life. So that's a tough look. But it's, I mean, sure, go back and see it if you want. But it just, I
It's
mean,
on TBS every week.
They got the rights for very cheap.
Peachtree TV. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, it's it was what it was. It was cool at the immediate time, but then after that, it's like, all right, we get
What
it.
do you think his best movie is?
Eddie Murphy's best movie?
Yeah.
Oh man, I want to say it's got to be either Coming to America or Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
Because those are such iconic characters and stories, and even though he fits into the stereotype with Coming to America, coming from this
Right.
fictional place in Africa and all that other jazz. It's there's such a great message behind it, and it's some of his greatest performances, I think. And it's just he's so involved in it, and he's so energetic and so spirited, and you take everything with I want grain of salt isn't the right term I'm looking for, but you just take what he's doing and you're just invested, and
Right.
you go along for
Yeah.
the ride. And
He commits to
enjoy
his
it.
characters,
100%,
like,
right? And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
on the flip side, with Beverly Hills Cop, now we're introduced to this comedian who's jumping into a little bit more action in like the second and third act, and you're just like, oh wait, he can do this too, but inject all that fun comedy. So it's it's got that Lethal Weapon mixture before Lethal Weapon, right? It's got that real buddy cop mojo. So I would say those two. It's hard for me to pick one
Yeah, fair.
out of those two. I don't know.
But you, Ian?
Oh, of those two, Beverly Hills Cop. Actually, I am ashamed to admit I don't think I've ever seen Coming to America. I gotta watch it.
Wow.
TBS is on Peachtree TV every week.
Yeah? Oh, excellent. I gotta get cable. you guys.
I'm really curious to see how you feel about it seeing it now, because for me it's one of those things that I think is a nostalgia thing, like
Right.
Goonies and different things like that that people don't always get when they see it later.
I can see
And
that.
it probably feels dated in a lot of ways, like Nigel's saying, it's maybe culturally insensitive, but I feel like they kind of own that at the same time.
For sure. For sure.
And because it came from them, they created it, right? And it's really neat how Eddie plays different characters with different attitudes. Some of the guys in the barbershop are just so fast talking and kind of hateful, but the lead character he plays is very calm and peaceful and kind, and it's neat to see him switch back and forth. And it's really fun. So yeah, you've never seen it. So obviously Beverly Hills Cop, but is there another movie that you?
I think Beverly Hills Cop Crazy holds up, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
movie,
yeah.
I watched it last year, and then I was reading the Wikipedia, and apparently it was just one of those scripts that was like thrown around Hollywood to like 40 different like white famous actors,
Yeah.
and didn't get made. And then they were like, maybe this Eddie Murphy kid can do it.
Well, it wasn't supposed to be a comedy originally, I don't think, as much anyway.
Not nearly as much of
Yeah.
a comedy. And then apparently, like most of it's just him riffing.
Yeah, right.
Like there are whole sections in the movie that he's
Oh,
making
man.
up on the spot.
The
There's
whole
one
thing with the bomb, like pretending like he's like
the
you
thing
can almost see him
where-
sweating. It's so
the
funny.
thing where the chief is chewing them out for what they did in the strip club, and he defends his partner or whatever, and he's like, let me tell you, this guy was a super cop. He was amazing. It's entirely him.
Oh, yeah, you can see
Apparently
him.
that's all made up on the spot, and you can see the other guy breaking up.
Yeah, the guy who
scene.
plays Taggart is
Yeah,
like
exactly.
shaking a little bit.
The one movie I was going to point out, just because I think it's the last good Eddie Murphy comedy,
Yeah.
is Bowfinger. Does anyone remember?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
Wow, dude. Okay.
With Steve Martin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I also think it's the last really good Steve Martin comedy.
It's ambitious and weird and fun
It's
and
weird.
and they
Yeah.
And it's just Eddie Murphy like playing two characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's so willing to play a weirdo in it.
yeah.
True.
But then also completely send up his own public persona as this like
Yeah.
insane celebrity who's in Scientology, I think it was.
It's a made up thing, but it's
Yeah.
very much Scientology. Yeah.
Like it's the last movie I can think of where Eddie Murphy is willing to trust someone and go out on a limb and really commit to
Yeah.
a really funny script.
Yeah, no, I love
Okay.
Bowfinger. Yeah, I watched it again about a year ago because I remember not loving it when it first came out, but because I think maybe I was too young to appreciate it, and I thought I would just get classic Eddie Murphy, and it was really different. But yeah, it's a great script, and Steve Martin's hilarious in it as well. What about you, Heather? You got a favorite?
Trading Places
Oh yeah,
and
I mean,
Coming to America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trading Places,
Places.
oddly enough, the first time I watched it was in economics class in OAC.
oh
Yes.
really?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Shout out to OAC.
Shout out to
yeah.
OAC,
Yeah. I
yes.
know what's up. I know what's
Yeah,
up.
and I was like, this is a fantastic movie.
I loved that
course.
movie when
Yeah.
I was younger, but I watched it a couple years ago, and I felt like it didn't hold up. It's
No? Jamie Lee Curtis, you see her boobies, though, don't you? That's pretty good. That's pretty exciting.
I
Yeah,
did
you
forget
do.
that.
Yeah. She's a sex worker in it.
It's
I
true.
used the correct term there.
I don't
sex
think they
worker.
do in
Well
the
done.
film, which is one of the
No,
problems.
they don't. They definitely don't. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things in there that are a bit problematic too.
Oh, for
It's a
sure.
product of its time for sure. I still haven't seen the movie he did with Dudley Moore.
Is that a remake too? Or with Dudley Moore? Oh, I feel like it's.
I want to say Armed and Dangerous, but that's not that one. That's the John Candy one.
Oh, yeah. That.
John Candy, Eugene Levy.
Yes, Eddie Murphy and Dudley Moore.
Is Dudley Moore dead?
Best Defense, 1984.
No, I thought I was
Yeah.
just thinking of a different movie.
As a defense contract.
Right, an engineer, Dudley Moore, fails to get the bugs out of a tank before an army officer, Eddie Murphy, has to use it in Kuwait.
What?
Yeah,
Holy
1984.
hell.
1984,
Yeah.
a hot 3.6 out of 10 on IMDb.
Shit.
Just
Yeah.
throwing that out there too. Just
Yeah.
letting you guys
Murphy
know.
could still make bombs even in the early 80s.
Yeah, that was 84. And then there's also the rumor that has been not discredited, debunked by Ivan Reitman that Ghostbusters was written for Eddie. I think that was a rumor that started, and then I think Dan Aykroyd sort of retroactively made that part of the story. Maybe
Right.
I'm not sure. Do you know about that?
The way I've always heard it is that originally Winston was supposed to have a much bigger part in Ghostbusters.
I know that's true. Yeah,
And show up earlier in the movie.
Ernie Hudson has said that the script changed sort of last minute.
Yeah,
on him,
and there was like all this backstory for him, like he was a demolitions guy from the military, and
Right.
it explained why he was like super capable when these three scientists were idiots. But yeah, the thing I've always heard is that they offered it to Eddie Murphy, and he didn't want to play support in a movie. in '84.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm a headliner. I don't want to be anything but the star. And that he had said that it's like one of the only things he regrets passing on, just because it ended up being so huge.
I've never seen a quote that he actually said that, and it's always sort of hearsay from what I've heard. But yeah. Don't know.
Well, shout out to Winston and his 12 minutes of fame in that movie. It's probably accumulatively what he got. I still rep him hard, though. So
Oh my
guy's
God,
action figure, you know
That's a
what
big Twinkie.
I mean? Yeah.
I met Ernie Hudson at Fan Expo a couple of years ago.
Oh,
and
yeah?
I don't usually get like silly when I meet celebrities, and I was such a goon. When I met him. Like, oh, Mr. Hudson, can you please sign my poster?
And you've also met Murray.
Yeah, but like, I mean, he signed a thing for me.
He signed a
Crush
thing.
of people.
Is that it?
That's it.
I got to meet Ramus. That was pretty cool. And in Chicago, yeah, our sketch troupe did a performance there, and he was one of the adjudicators, and he was sort of critiquing our stuff, which is really cool. And he said, "I want to have a Socratic conversation with you about how you do your sketch," which was just so him the way he was talking. And he was like, "Is it?" Because we were doing a thing. Our troupe was called Radio Vault. We did sketch comedy, but we didn't act anything out. We stood in front of microphones and read scripts. And he said, "Is there a reason you don't act it out?" And I said, "Well, you know, we have a pretty tight scripts, and you know, I said something like, we don't want it to be confusing for the audience or something." It was such a stupid answer. And he said, "Well, I can't think of a time where an audience was ever confused because people were moving around on stage." It's like, yeah, fair enough. And then I got pretty defensive about it. And then later I ran into him in the bathroom and I said, "I hope I wasn't being too defensive when you're asking those questions." And he just looked at me and shrugged and went, "It's Socratic." And I was like, "You're so Harold Ramis. That's so great. You're so cool." So yeah, that was probably the best interaction I could possibly hope for with that guy. So that was pretty neat. Yeah. I think that's a good time for us to take a little break. We can go to the washroom, grab a drink, and you guys can submit any questions you may have for our panel, and we will answer them
that's
in the
fun.
second half. We'll be back on a flash.
Give me one.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
They were like, I don't know, maybe. And then Black Panther came out there, like, we're very glad they did that. That was really cool.
Awesome. We're talking about Black Panther.
Wakanda forever.
Eddie Murphy was originally offered the role, and he
Oh, no.
turned it down.
Oh boy, don't tell me.
There's another rumor. That's the new Ghostbusters rumor.
We're just starting rumors on this podcast.
He wanted to play Uncle Panther.
Oh, cool. we're gonna walk away from this right now. So good to see you, Jay. So good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
There's a reason we haven't kept in touch. Never really. You know what?
Our
I
whole
remember.
we just reunited and then broke up in the same
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
It's like,
I forgot
fast.
now. Yeah, we meet each other every 5 years in a
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
We're so excited, and then halfway through the podcast, we just part ways. One of us leaves
Yeah.
mid-podcast.
Love it.
Still waiting to see which one it is. I remember. I'm really glad to see that you've done well in comedy. You've done many. You've written and performed in. Was it 4 or 5?
Yeah, 4 shows. Second City. Yep.
shows.
4 main stage shows.
The first thing I saw you do comedy-wise was with Cabral Richards.
Yeah.
And it was you did a take on the Who's on First routine.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
you remember that?
I do remember that.
I
Yeah.
think you made it like a basketball team.
I you know what? Honestly, you would remember better than I do, but I do remember that bit, and
was ambitious.
and we did me and Cap did do that bit, and it worked out really well. But it was one of those things where I had no fucking clue what I was doing. Neither did he. We were learning this Laurel and Hardy bit, man. It was
Abbott and
it was
Costello.
ridiculous. Oh no!
Jeez.
Wow, see that?
There's your problem.
See that?
No respect for what came
That's what I'm
before.
talking about.
That was the saddest, quietest horn
It was.
I've ever heard. Yeah, it's well, it was ambitious. You sort of tried to modernize it, but there's only so much you can do with that bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, you were talking to high school students in the mid '90s who'd never heard it, and they were like, huh.
What? Yeah, that's okay because we were in it and we were like, what?
Everyone was confused.
Yeah, it was great. It was
Oh,
great.
good on you for trying it. I loved it.
Thanks, man.
All right, we've got a couple of questions.
For the record, I just love how you bring up my my second seat accolades and then you immediately go to something that I don't remember, and then beat me up on it. And now we're moving on to the album. Anyways,
and nothing on Heather.
I had to get the.
gotta, like,
No.
on skates.
We know where the beef is here. I get the upper hand again. This is how I feel good about myself. I have guests on that are doing better than I am, and I just push them down with memories
so
of their
funny.
failures.
My God.
So let me tell you about when I first lost my respect for Ian.
we were all silent because we didn't know where this is going, and I was
That's
like,
what this is
"Oh,
about.
Are we ever going to talk about this album?
Sure. Well, the audience would like to. Okay. We have a question here. Eddie's impression of Mr. T was compared to his impressions of Michael Jackson, Elvis, etc. How much of that do you feel was familiarity versus liking the character? Mr. T was still fairly new as a celebrity at the time, while Elvis and the rest had been famous for years.
I wonder, was Mr. T a big deal back then?
For young people, he
yeah.
was. He was huge for kids.
Yeah, he was starting to
What year
be.
was the album?
83.
Is the 18 out? I think it was.
I feel like it was
Yeah.
on the air.
Yeah, Mr. T was a thing. And he was doing like PSAs for kids, and he might have already been doing like a cartoon series and his
I
cereal.
was going to say
and
that, and I
everything.
think he was a GI Joe at that point too.
Oh
'Cause
yeah,
don't
and
forget the
wrestling.
action
He
figure.
did wrestle. He was
Yep.
WWF too. Yeah, I think
So in
all
that
stuff
wheelhouse,
was around-
anyway.
Yeah, he was at least on the rise, if not at his peak.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. No, he was a thing.
But
I don't
Eddie
think it was
said,
too bad.
I
an impression.
pitied a fool yet, or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I think
Had
that
he
was
said
it.
that yet?
I assume so.
But
I don't
why
know.
Didn't, so why didn't Eddie say it?
I don't know why he even had a catchphrase. Like, Mr. T, did he just play himself in everything he was
Yes.
in? Like, he was B.A. Baracus in the 18, but it was essentially Mr. T.
Yeah.
He always had the mohawk and the
Earrings,
the
like
and,
the
and all
long,
the
yeah,
jewelry and
feathers
stuff.
and stuff.
But, like, was he just a personality? Did he have a... He didn't do stand-up or anything,
No.
right? Like, he was just sort of
I
a...
think that's just who he is as a man. Like,
Yeah.
TV producers found him one day at a restaurant. They were like,
just trying to return a burger, like, so angrily or something.
"We're
Like, this guy's
this larger
amazing.
than life person. We're just going to build a show around him. That
How
makes
does a
no
guy who
sense."
looks
That's
like
my
this
dream.
take himself so seriously?
I mean, what if he didn't look like that at all before A-Team? You know what I mean? Like, what if we can find a shot of him and he looked more like Carlton from Fresh Prince? And then they're like, no, we love your voice, but we need to change this
Gotta match
image.
ya.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like, oh,
Who's
where'd you
the
go to school?
stylist?
Yeah, he's like,
But
he's
it's
like,
like a
Yale.
cult where he can't get out of it now. He's
Yeah.
too far in.
Yeah.
He's this forever.
Yeah, he is
He
100%.
actually had a show like a couple of years ago that was like a video clip show.
What?
Just like maybe like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, because he also had the animated series, a newer animated series that came out. I think that was before the video clip show. You can find that online somewhere as well.
Is it still like a torn off sleeves jean
No,
vest,
he's
or-
like it's almost like oh man, how can I compare it? It's kind of like a mysteries and it's like Mr. T and the Mystery Finders or some kind
What?
of weird. Yeah.
I know they did a thing on Mike Tyson, the Mike Tyson mysteries or something, which I
Shit,
thought
man.
was
You know
really
what?
weird.
You're right.
The black man did it. The black
Oh.
man did it.
Look, I don't know my own people, man. You know what I mean? You're right.
You know
You're
what?
right.
You're probably thinking of the SNL sketch from the '90s. Because with the TV's Funhouse cartoons,
Right,
they
yeah,
did,
yeah.
like, it was like
Yeah, dig 'em
Mr.
out,
T
Ian.
with a couple of kids. No, but it was like a cartoon. It was Mr. T with a couple of kids, and the joke was
There
just
was,
how
yeah.
Yeah,
divorced from reality Mr. T was.
Oh yeah.
that I do remember
And
100%.
it looks exactly like that Mike Tyson
think.
Mysteries thing.
Yeah.
I feel like he'd be in the kind of show where, like, if your cat runs under a car, just pick up the car. Like, just total nonsense, and he's like the strongest person ever.
But to answer the question, I feel like he just leaned on his singing more so than anything. I feel like he leaned on that kind of talent that he had. The Mr. T thing was. The impression was cool. The bit, well, we know the bit, but
It was recurring.
yeah, it was recurring, right? But I think he just leaned on that talent more. I think he had more legs in singing and doing those impressions than the Mr. T thing. It almost felt like the Mr. T thing was, hey, I can do this. I'm gonna try it. I'm just gonna see what happens, and then I'm gonna walk away from
I
it.
don't think there's any impression of Mr. T that is layered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
for
mean, it's
sure.
a one note
For
bit,
sure.
You know?
Yeah.
There's not Jim Carrey is not getting an Emmy for that was a great. I mean, Jim Carrey would be the wrong guy to do a Mr. T impression, I guess.
Daniel
But,
Day-Lewis is not playing Mr.
Daniel
T.
Day-Lewis is not playing Mr. T.
I saw it. It was cool.
Yeah.
It's the same. We're not talking. Oh, all right.
in the
I did
role?
it again.
Did you confuse Daniel Day-Lewis
I did.
for
No, man, I did.
for Keenan Ivory Wayans
Yeah,
again?
I like how you put again at the end of it. I'm like, damn it. Always get those two mixed up.
They got similar letters in the name. So we don't know. We don't want to answer the question. Here's another one. Would you say who would you say is a modern contemporary to Eddie Murphy in today's comedy or film market? Can one person rise to that level of fame?
Ooh.
You so rarely see people get as famous as Eddie Murphy was back then. There just weren't as many options for things to watch.
I think Jim Carrey was getting close in his heyday.
in his heyday, but his heyday was like mid-90s.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just trying to think of like right now. I almost want to say Donald Glover.
No.
Kevin Hart's in a lot of
Kevin
movies
Hart.
these
Yes,
days.
actually, Kevin Hart's probably.
He's a very known commodity, and
I think that might be the closest, man.
Yeah.
Because all the other actors and performers and comedians that I'm thinking of are different pieces of Eddie
That's
and what
the
he's
thing.
got, but they're not the most cohesive. And I
Yeah.
think when you say Kevin Hart, I think that's the closest that I can think of. The closest, because I mean his movies aren't great, and they're not the box office hits.
They're really
Yeah.
bad.
That's-
But
yeah.
his stand-up
got a
is just
broad
like, he
appeal.
dominates,
Well,
right?
He
that's what I
does.
mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like it's so
Right.
we've got more of the stand up than the movies, but Eddie had like both. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. But I mean, Kevin's still he's making like 6 movies a year. It seems like, and some of them. I mean, he was in Jumanji, which was a hit.
oh right,
really
yeah.
I don't know how well that one with The Rock did. The Central Intelligence.
I think it did pretty well.
Yeah. You know what the tagline for that is? Something like, sometimes you need a little heart and a big Johnson. Yeah.
I guarantee that got that movie greenlit. They were like, we have a tagline and nothing else, and we'll figure it out on the day. And they were like, here's all the
Figure it
money.
out on the day.
On the day. Everyone just show up.
Yeah, just we're gonna make a movie based on the
They
tagline.
opened a
have a great
closet
lunch.
and someone brought out a wheelbarrow of money and was like, just figure it out. Yeah.
I think it was out for one weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, Central Intelligence actually isn't bad.
Really? You
It's
saw it?
pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, those two guys, I mean, how can you
Like,
go
they're
wrong?
both solid, but the whole game of the movie is The Rock being a lunatic.
Oh, yeah?
And Kevin Hart constantly calling out, like, nothing you're saying makes sense. And he's like, cool, let's do it. He's like, no, I emphatically said no.
Kevin Hart's a good panicker.
Yes.
He's fun to watch
He is, yeah.
lose his shit.
Yeah.
I really liked him in Jumanji. I liked that movie a lot, actually, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
There's a lot of fun stuff in there.
New podcast for just about
Okay. The
I have it
Jumanji.
recorded, ready to watch. Actually, yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Watch
Your
it.
time.
I know. I'm looking forward to
Did you say you have it recorded?
I always said I have a PVR'd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's like you have a
PVR.
VCR hooked up to Netflix or
I
something?
did
I
actually
refuse to watch in real time.
use a VCR until about 2011.
Amazing.
I still say stuff's
recorded my
taped.
programs. Yeah, it's taped. My shows are
Taped, yeah.
yeah.
Rewind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you still do rewind. So, why not?
Please be kind.
Exactly.
What's that movie? There's a Jack Black movie where
Be
they
kind,
Kind
please
Rewind.
rewind.
Be Kind, Rewind.
Oh yeah, be kind. Rewind. Yeah.
That was a short conversation. Had potential, not great. No Eddie Murphy. Let's move on. Okay, someone okay, there are asterisks. A trigger warning, inappropriate question. Okay, we're gonna find out as we go. Have we lost access? Oh boy. No, not the right time.
No, not right now.
Not the right time. Have we lost access to jokes now that we are becoming a more politically correct and sensitive / aware society? Is this a shame?
Yes.
Comedy is about relatability, even when it's so wrong, or even more so. Yeah, it was a weird how it ended there. But have we lost access to jokes now that we're becoming a politically correct and sensitive, aware society? Is this a shame? I think we definitely have lost access to these jokes. Heather, you have some strong opinions.
No, I don't know what I'm going to say, but I really do because I'm very politically incorrect in a lot of things that I say.
How so?
I don't know, poopy fart, like just horrible things.
Yeah.
I say things that are not allowed.
I feel like
I'm
those words.
offended by that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's
Those
funny.
words are on breakfast cereal boxes anymore. I mean,
no poopy farts. I did love that fart bit though in the
oh yeah,
the album.
very
That's right.
relatable.
I don't know. A lot of my comedy stems from things that make people uncomfortable. So it could possibly have a phobic undertone, a racist undertone, and all that stuff is all not how I actually feel.
Right.
But I find that it's secretly hilarious, and I know now that I can't do that anymore.
Well, do
And
you?
I'm like, well, what do I laugh about now?
Do you take it from a point of view as like the quote unquote character you play as a comedian feels these offensive things, or do you poke fun at the idea that it's offensive, or
Maybe because I fit into a subgroup myself as a fat woman, and all the roles that I play seem to be like either subtly mocking a fat person. It's never just like, I just happen to be fat. It's always mocking the fat person in some sort of way. So maybe I'm
Right.
kind of like, I'm with you. Like, let's all be minorities together. I don't know.
You have to accept it.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't everybody else? Is that kind of the thing?
Sure,
like,
sure.
If I have to take my lumps, everyone should. Type
My
of thing,
lumps,
maybe?
eh?
Oh God, I'm so sorry. Awful. Not intended.
Yeah. But I mean, I do feel badly that everyone has to be censored. But it's true because I think it's necessary. I think it's necessary that for everyone to actually have their say and stuff. So I don't know. I continue. I don't know.
Well, no, it's valid. I know. I love the perspective. Fellas, what do you think?
Yes. Here's the deal. I feel like, I know from experience being on the Second City main stage and just being a black guy, being the only, visual minority on that stage at that time, right? And then having 5 cast members that were white. There was things that you could feel the audience expecting me to say. And I just didn't want to say it, or would be like, cool, I'll give you this one joke and then I'm moving on from it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Let's call a spade, or let's call it the elephant in the room, whatever the thing is. But the bigger picture is that from the shows that I've seen in the States, they just address everything. It's like, hey, this is happening in our world. This is happening in our world. Where would we be without the sarcasm, without the satirical jokes, or the satirical commentary? Because it's happening. It's here. I do think that with this world now that we have, it's so bigger, it's painted with so many more colors, so much more vibrancy, that everybody is very hypersensitive to where they fit now or what they're supposed to be in this world. So when you touch upon something, with respect or with due diligence, it's all it takes is one word or one sentence to really trigger somebody or to let somebody go loose. When, yes, decades ago we might say that thing in a different way. I think we can still say it, but I just think it's about having the decency or the respect to either setting up that joke properly or that platform properly, or just being aware that we're gonna say stuff. We're human beings. We're gonna say stuff, but let's just be mindful and respectful, but still be aware that sometimes shit happens and it's funny, or things happen and it's funny. You know what I mean? I know it's kind of a broad statement that I'm making, but
no, you're really good.
I don't know
said
how
exactly what I'm thinking, but in the right words.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to make up for all the fucking bad references or mistaken actors and actresses that I've screwed up. Anyways, continue. Ian, go ahead.
Good. Mike Tyson, same guy.
Yeah.
Ed Harris as the hurricane, though.
Yeah.
was
Oh, God.
amazing.
See, I agree with what you're saying, and to the point of the question, I actually don't think we're losing access to things to talk about. I really don't. I think we're just talking about them in different ways.
Oh, for sure.
Taking
Yeah.
different routes to them. I think, like, you listen to the opening joke of this album or the opening bit, and a lot of the mileage he's getting is because he says that word a lot.
Right. A word we don't normally say, yeah.
Even I
Then
feel
or
weird
now.
saying. But, like, at the root of it, like, those jokes, it's just a lot of lazy gay panic jokes.
Right.
Yep.
Whereas I feel like I could totally go out and watch a stand-up walk up there now and tell a lot of jokes about, like, this makes me uncomfortable. And when I'm with someone who's gay, I don't know how to act or what to do. And
Well, it's more self-deprecating.
you're talking about the same topic. I just think we talk about stuff differently now.
Right.
And also, like, I mean, he uses the word bitch a lot in this.
Yeah.
And there's that whole thing about, like, people who are Arabic.
Yeah.
It's just like, are we losing access to something? I don't think so. You could argue that we are, but it's like, do we need access to that?
Sure. Yeah.
Do we need access to being like, oh, this person's accent is weird and makes me feel uncomfortable. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I don't really think we are. I think we can still talk about these things. I think people just talk about them differently now.
And I think there's still people who talk about it in this way, but those people are not successful. We don't aren't interested in that perspective anymore. And my thought is sort of like, go ahead, try the material the way you want to do it. It ain't gonna go well.
Did you hear about that guy at Just for Laughs last weekend?
Oh, yes.
Holy shit!
Oh, what happened?
Yeah.
This guy who I'd never heard of before. He's apparently a YouTube star named Darren Knight, I think. And he does a character called Southern Mama, who's like a Southern woman and all this kind of stuff. And he was on the Variety Comics to Watch panel. And he went and did the show and fucking bombed. Because he's a YouTuber and not a stand-up and didn't have jokes.
Right.
And then at the end started calling out the audience for being like, comedy shouldn't be about sex or racism anymore. Like, no one wants to see that. And like the audience booed him off the stage at this like huge showcase. And then Chris Redd from SNL was hosting the thing, and there's a video of him backstage
following him,
tearing a strip off.
He goes into it. Yeah, he goes into him. He goes into him. Yeah, it's one of those things where you have an image or a perception of somebody, and then you see that other personality of them. Again, I'm not judging Chris Ed for it, but I'm just saying you just didn't see that in it. Like that was him. That was him affected personally, like to the deepest core, and just was standing up for every comedian of every walk of life, and just it was so passionate and so so real. Yeah, it's very unreal. Very unreal.
Well, when he was Chris, he also insulted some of the other performers.
That was even a bigger thing. Yeah, is that he insulted some of the performers like that night that were on before him.
Oh yeah, that's not cool.
Brutal.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Not cool.
Yeah.
I think what I was trying to say was that basically I'm so cautious of people talking about my things, like pointing out fat things. I'm like always like listening so intently nowadays because of those things. So now I'm so petrified of anything that comes out of my mouth that it's going to offend someone in the room.
Sure.
So like, saying they, them, and things like that. Like I'm just so cautious of those things right now. And so it's hard to just go on a rant without being like, oh shit, But
I think if you're conscious of this type of thing, you're going to be forgiven for not being perfect. And there's people out there who refuse to even try.
Well, I think that's the thing, right? I think that is the thing, is that there's an adjustment that we're all going through, especially as performers, as comedians.
as snowflakes.
Yes, as snowflakes, right? We're all going through an adjustment to figure this out so we can move forward and still include everybody. So there's just a lot.
And I think it's obvious the people who are trying and the people who aren't.
100%.
People who rail against, I'm not going to start saying they and them. Like, that's not that hard to do. It might take time to have it be your reflex, but it's not a hard thing to try to do.
Like you said too, Jason, I just feel like so many people, they're all like, I can't say anything anymore. I'm so petrified of saying something. When the reality is that if, in my experience, if you say something and then someone comes to you and is like, hey, that's kind of uncool, as long as you're willing to listen to that person
and have a conversation
with them, and then afterwards maybe be like, you know what, you're right, you have a really good point, I'm not going to do that anymore. Like, that's kind of all it takes.
Yeah, but we're in an age now where no one has to take anything back anymore. It feels like that everything I say is correct, my opinion is fact, and I get very defensive if people are hurt by what I say. I didn't mean that, I can say what I want. Well, fine, yes, but what happened to empathy? Maybe we should care that our words hurt somebody, and that's a value still, isn't it?
Yep.
Well, it's like on the Beaverton, there was one time that we had an article go up it was about missing murdered Indigenous women, and the whole point, the point was government inaction. Like, the government's not doing enough. We're trying to take a swing at them for that. The wording of the article was fucking terrible, and it offended people. Yeah. And we got called out by actual activists within that community. And our instinct immediately was to be like, but we meant good things. That's not what we meant to do. But we stopped and we were like, you know what? They have a really good point. This isn't a hill to die on. We should just acknowledge that we were wrong, and we did, and it blew over in a day.
Well, yeah,
because we weren't trying to be like, but our points.
Yeah, a little accountability goes a long way.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. You can quote me on that, Nigel.
I don't even know what you said.
You've been just trying to draw lines between black actor names to white faces in your head and figure out where you went wrong.
I'm having a hard enough time with just black actors, man. Let's go. Next question.
A joke that so this might be sort of the same type of thing, but a joke that works in 1983 does not always work 35 years later. That's crazy to think that's 35 years later. What's the responsibility of the joke teller over the old material? That's interesting. We've been seeing stuff like that recently where, James Gunn got fired for years-old tweets from Disney. He can't direct the next Guardians of the Galaxy. People have come to his defense. And Rian Johnson, who directed The Last Jedi, deleted thousands of his tweets so he wouldn't be attacked by people mining that kind of stuff. Michael Ian Black was attacked. There's a lot of people. I don't want to make too many generalizations, but it seems that there are some right-wing extreme. What's the word for that? The alt-right people who are using old tweets of people to sort of attack liberals. Can things go away anymore? What is the responsibility of everything we say? And this question is about what's the responsibility of the joke teller over the old material. And we were talking on the break how Eddie Murphy actually in 1996 did issue a public apology for the sort of anti-LGBT material he said and said, "I'm not the man I was then. I know a lot more about it."
And that was 3 years after, right?
15 years.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said 93.
96.
Oh, I'm sorry. 96. I'm sorry.
It was like he was filming a movie in San Francisco or something like
Right,
that.
right.
Obviously, there's a lot of LGBT activists in San Francisco, and I guess they were protesting his appearance on Letterman.
Yeah, to promote them.
Right.
Yeah.
And Murphy put out that apology, like you said, like very unreserved. He was like, "Look, man, I realize a lot of the things I said in that stand-up special were very wrong. I know a lot more, obviously, about AIDS now. It's so bonkers to listen to someone talking to a crowd where they're getting applause breaks for stuff that is so wildly misinformed about something as serious as AIDS.
Even though so many people in that audience fully knew that what he was saying was incorrect. Because they have family and friends. I mean, some of the people.
I guess, but like 83 feels like pretty early for that
pretty
stuff.
early.
But people were starting to like lose family members and
True.
friends and stuff.
Yeah, well, it's also mean-spirited beyond misinformed, I think, Yeah, the wild applause for that kind of stuff is kind of spooky. Yeah, and these are supposed to be, this is a liberal audience that's listening to him.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
I think it's like taking responsibility. As long as you're willing to acknowledge a thing I said back then doesn't have to be right forever, then,
That's a great statement. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and as far as words go, words are different than actions, I think. And, something you said 10 years ago that someone dug up, is that something you deserve to be punished for now? Not necessarily, I don't think.
It's such a weird thing listening to especially his stuff about the gay community. Because for a second, he almost takes a stab at getting really open-minded about it. Because he's like, I'm not saying, you shouldn't alienate gay people. And I'm like, oh, that's a nice thing to say.
Play tennis with them.
And then he immediately goes into stuff about AIDS, and I'm like, oh, you just doubled down and made it twice as bad.
And really cheap, lazy joke. He really uses the same joke over and over, just over different impressions from sitcoms.
Pretty much.
Like, just when you think you're enjoying that Desi Arnaz thing.
Oh, God.
And that's how he ends that bit.
A lot of it's layered too, right? Like, I mean, it's a cultural thing too, just to make sure that is out there in terms of the black culture and colliding with gay society. It's very much at the time very much taboo, right? It's not a thing that anybody on the islands talked about or was known. It was very, very taboo, right? So. Also, I feel like I don't want to. Obviously, I can't speak for Eddie Murphy, but at the time, I think that was one of those things where he knew he could get mileage off of that just because of the culture of the people that were coming to see him that immediately identified with that ideology because they were all grown up with that, right? It's that kind of weird stereotype where black people are afraid of cops, it's that kind of thing. I mean, then and even now, but it's that kind of thing. So it's. Again, I'm not defending him by any means.
No,
I'm just saying it just adds layer to maybe why those jokes were in there, which is tough to to listen to again. I mean, we were all listening to it, and we were all just everybody here. We were all feeling it. We were just all like, "Wow, man!
Yeah.
Wow!" And just everything he said, "Wow!" You know, like it just.
It took me so long over the last few years because, like I said, this was a stand-up special I loved when I was a kid. And I keep wanting to tell people, like, oh, one of my favorite stand-up specials of all time is Delirious. And you try and show it to someone now, and I've just stopped.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, it comes in so hard right off the top.
Off the top.
So many times you're going, well, this part isn't great anymore, but this next bit.
But this
Well,
next bit-
actually, this part still isn't great anymore.
Yeah, and then it just keeps coming and going. You're like, let's just put something
That's
else
how I
on.
was feeling this whole time. I was like, this is my suggestion.
My boyfriend and I listened to it last night because we thought we'd give it a go one more time. And he's 40 now, and he was saying back in high school that they had like an underground tape that everyone listened to, and he was so proud of it when he knew that he knew all the jokes and stuff. And then listening to it again last night for the first time in 20-something years, he had his head down in shame. He was so embarrassed.
Yeah.
And he was like, I can't believe that I thought this was so funny and how homophobic I was when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And he said, the reason why I was homophobic is because I was so petrified that people might know that, like, you know, maybe I tickle a fancy of that guy over there, or maybe I tickle a fancy of that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the homophobia was so...
When I was a kid, we didn't
Yeah.
even know what it meant. We just knew it was an insult.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
something you didn't want to be. We didn't really understand
No way, Jose.
if we felt any of that stuff or if anybody did.
Yeah.
It was a thing that wasn't real that you would make up about somebody. It was like, you might as well have been saying they had purple skin or something. Like,
Yeah.
Exactly,
You know, it was just, oh, you're not gay, are you? No, that's impossible. Like, you know,
Right,
it was,
yeah.
You know, it was just
True.
was not reality. I can't imagine what it was like for people who were actually maybe feeling some things.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine what it would have been like to try and watch this back then. Because, like, I was in, theater when I was a kid. I had a couple
Right.
of friends who were gay. I can't imagine trying to watch this with them, and if it would have twigged to me, like, oh, shit, they are probably not enjoying this.
Yeah.
Or would I do...
And they're the ones saying the jokes the loudest, probably, back to you, yeah.
Or it's like, or would it not have even occurred to me? Would I just have been like, oh, we're all laughing at this, we're all enjoying it, right? Like, I don't know.
Oh,
I laughed at
neither do I.
everything as a kid. I laughed at everything. I still did until like a few years ago, and then all of a sudden I realized, wow, this is hurting people's feelings.
Yeah, well, and I've also had attitudes at different points in my life where I thought everybody should learn to take a joke. I didn't
Yeah.
have the empathy I do now. I didn't understand that people were getting hurt and that they weren't just overly sensitive. Like, I thought, hey, it doesn't hurt me. Why should it hurt anybody? I can take a joke. The white male North American middle class
Who
guy
played Ernie Lipnitz.
If I can take a joke, why can't everybody?
I was thinking you were the guy in the wheelchair on the show, but you were never in a wheelchair, were you?
Not to my recollection.
show.
No,
No, okay, that's
no,
fine. I was
never been.
I was like, because then, I don't know, that'd have been
That's
fun.
a new one. I've never been
Yeah.
asked that one. You weren't in a wheelchair, were you?
Someone else was in a wheelchair on that show that dated.
Well,
Was that guy better?
No, this one was.
Drake.
Oh, wow, all right.
Drake was in a wheelchair
That's a
in
whole decade
Degrassi.
later. Yeah, that's a whole
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's interesting what you're saying, Nigel, about culturally how the reason that maybe Eddie Murphy was putting some of the stuff into this. And I was thinking that it's so interesting to me that in the same year, he won over Richard Pryor's album. Or sorry, no, Richard Pryor won the year before. Richard Pryor did not lose to him. But these two guys seem to have completely different styles and different sort of cultural touchstones. And I think that Eddie had a broader appeal that sort of transcended race, I think, in a way that Pryor didn't quite. Is that fair to say?
I think so. 'Cause I think Pryor was Pryor was like a little bit more gritty, like a little bit more, I shouldn't even say little, because that is a drastic understatement. He was quite gritty and just raw, right?
Yeah.
He was that independent film that kind of rose up and won awards
Right.
and nobody saw coming.
He wasn't trying to please anybody.
Not at all.
You know?
Not at all, right? And then Eddie was, hey, I'm going to take that, the makings of that or the template of that, and I'm going to glamorize it some more and see what I can do and make that appeal a little bit broader, right?
Yeah.
So he came with more of the glamour and the flashiness, which really started to appeal to everybody, right? So his jokes were a little broader, a little flashier, but Pryor. I mean, Pryor was great for again. All these guys are great, or all these performers, all these comedians are great in that era
Yeah.
per se, right?
Right.
Without getting to the real meat and bones of it, but so that was Yeah, those kind of crazy to see. And like Red Fox too, same thing, because Red
Yeah.
Fox and Richard Pryor would have been in the same kind
Well,
of
and both of
upbringing.
them, Eddie cited as influences,
Yeah.
as well as Cosby and
Yeah.
Robin Williams, which is interesting. Like I can definitely see some of that madcap silliness
Totally.
mixed in with the other stuff, sort of the angrier, lower middle class, sort of living on the street kind of stuff, like the ice cream stuff, and
And I think I think that really goes to the observational humor, right? I
Sure.
don't know. I know there's different tiers or different types of comedians and stuff. I'm not very well versed on the stand up world, but just the observations that Eddie made were so specific and so
Yeah,
unique
very
that
accessible.
I just want to bring up this one point, because as soon as he brought up the ice cream man bit, right, which is one of my favorite bits of all time, that immediately took me back to Cambridge, Ontario. Shout out to the homegrown.
CDOT.
Yeah. But when we had Dickie D's.
yeah, man, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
if you guys
Yes,
remember
yes.
Dickie D's,
Bikes.
that's a person on a bike, and the ice cream truck per se was shrunk down on the front of the bike. And once you heard that bell, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that was our equivalent. And so not knowing we didn't have so many ice cream trucks. We did, but not so many. But the Dickie D was for us. So
And the
just
Dickie
that-
D was maybe once every few summers.
for sure.
So,
Like,
so hard to
Rare.
track them down.
Sasquatch.
They were
Yeah.
unpredictable.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Sasquatch.
Yeah.
So it's just that kind of observational relatability.
Oh, yeah,
right?
everyone
so,
can relate to it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like whether it's a truck or that bell, we know the sound and we know what he's talking about, regardless
Yeah.
of where you're from. There's something like
And
that.
I love the idea of the welfare part. I mean, you know, people kind of wince and laugh at that part, but it's interesting to me that you can laugh whoever you were in that. If you were a regular, you know, if you were sort of like a middle class kid, you knew a poor kid.
Yeah.
Or you were the poor kid. And I love that you can either relate to the middle class kid laughing at the poor kid, or you can relate to the poor kid who laughs when the middle class kid drops
Yeah,
his ice
yeah,
cream
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
he gets his comeuppance. And
Well-
it kind of appeals to different people and for different reasons.
It's interesting what you said though, Nigel, because I feel like a lot of Murphy's stand-up, as filthy as it is and as like edgy for the time as it is, he's talking about a lot of very broad experiences. I
Yeah.
think he's still concerned with keeping his material very accessible. Because my understanding is that like Murphy grew up pretty middle class, like
Yeah.
pretty suburban, whereas like
Oh, I didn't know that.
Pryor talks about like
Boy, yeah.
I grew up really
yeah.
hard,
Right.
and like he talks a lot about really painful like childhood experiences, whereas Eddie is a lot like, oh, isn't it weird when your family all gets together, and didn't we all watch the same
Yeah.
TV growing up,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like his stuff is. Yeah, I think he's trying to be accessible even as much as he tries to be the badass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One more question here. Murphy is often hyper-specific. Well, this is sort of what we were talking about already. Murphy is often hyper-specific but remains accessible. How, as a comedian, do you find the balance between specificity and accessibility?
Oh, wow, two big words.
Yeah, I was gonna say too big.
Yeah, if you're too specific, you can alienate, I guess, a lot of your audience, right? But how do you know? How do comedians know? Seinfeld's great at that too. That even though Seinfeld, you know, grew to be a multi-millionaire, but still writes stuff that is about the average schmo. Like he's still like I've wondered this recently about Seinfeld. Does he sometimes just take a walk through a poor neighborhood, like, or does he just imagine what people are doing as he's bathing in champagne and things like that? You know, like how do you stay grounded, and how do you know when something is that accessible? But it's specific. Like it's the specifics that make us laugh, right? It's like, yes, that's exactly that. You know.
Well, for
guess
me,
trial and
quickly,
error is-
I think it's when I teach improv, and we have a tendency to go to, as a community, as an improv community, to go to jokes or places, like locations that are American specific. And what I'm talking about is, if the butt end of a joke is, or a character's background educationally, if it's from, you know, Harvard, right? That's what people will go to, Harvard or Yale. Cool. So I immediately know what you're trying to get at, which is you went to an Ivy League school, a really smart school in whatever state. So I immediately think and tell them, hey, you know what? Why don't you make that like a McGill or like a Western? One, you may be able to get a joke out of it for some people that either went to that school or hate that school. I hate Western. Or if it's like but the specificity.
Specificity.
Yeah, specificity of the school that people will relate to because it is also Canadian and we all have that idea. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I just
Yep.
like to make things a little bit more. I guess ultimately what I'm saying, I like to make things a little bit more Canadian for us, which also to me says, hey, you can tailor your jokes to your audience. It's okay to
right.
just shift it a little bit. Like you know what the punchline is. I mean, the setup can move around just slightly. This is speaking solely from the sketch world, but you can move it around a little bit, you know. But I think it's just knowing your audience. For me, anyway.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, totally. That reminds me of that Steve Martin bit where he says, I wrote a few jokes. I know that the plumbers union is at this show tonight. And he says, it just goes on about this wrench. He's like, you shouldn't use that. This is for the RF2. And nobody laughs. He goes, or was that Wednesday night that the plumbers union? It's so ridiculously specific. Yeah, I love it. Nigel Downer teaches improv.
I do.
And comedy at the Second City. You can find him there 24 hours a day.
That's not true.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap things up here. Nigel, final thoughts on Eddie Murphy, on comedian, on...
Yeah, my final thoughts are that, look, I came to tears at a lot of moments in this album. And Jason, I think what happened was you brought up this word specifically, and you said nostalgia. And I think that's a lot of the emotion that was invoked from me, right? Yes, there were a lot of things that were said that I definitely object to at this point in time, but it also just brought me back to a different place when I was growing up and when I listened to that album and who I listened to that album with. Ian was mentioning, you know, listening to the album with other friends and knowing the bits verbatim. So for me, final thought, man, I love Eddie Murphy for what he helped me become, and I could take little bits of him in my performance. You know, and I think I loved what he brought to the stage. I love that he dared to wear leather as much as Michael Jackson did, and wore it with wore it with a lot of grace and style and poise. But him as a comedian, as a performer, I mean, I think he's one of the greatest. I think he's one of the greatest.
How would you say he's influenced you? How do you use that influence in your work?
The fun that he has, I think the fun in the observation is definitely something that I've taken from his school of thought. I look and I observe constantly, like all the time, and I think having that fun and owning it, and he sits in silences and he goes for bits and just pushes a little bit more, and then knows when to back off, you know. And I think that's a really hard skill to learn, or one that you need to really just play with, you know, and commit to.
Well said, man.
Thanks, dude.
Cool. Mr. McIntyre?
Holds up. Wouldn't change a thing. No.
Nice. You should have left it at that. That was amazing. made me sound like a real arrogant pompous ass right there.
No.
It's great.
Hey, Nigel. Guess
honestly-
who gets to edit this thing?
I'm trying to remember exactly. There were a couple of moments that when we were listening to it tonight where he wasn't saying anything awful and where it killed.
Yeah.
And it's just so, his joke writing fundamentals are perfect. Mm-hmm. It's just that so many of the jokes he's making are lazy slurs of the time, and that fucking sucks. Mm-hmm. But it's just amazing to remember that when he's not trying to do that, he's so brilliant. And getting to see how this is the building blocks of everything else he would do for his career. Like, it's a historical artifact now, this Delirious and Comedian and all of it. But at the same time, Jesus Christ, he was so brilliantly talented. Like, I get why that guy went from being nothing and then in 2 years was the most famous comedian on the planet. Yeah, I still got a lot of affection for this album, even if intellectually I am well aware that it's not something I'm going to put on at a party.
Fair enough.
Also, at my parties, I make people sit quietly and listen to stand-up comedy. Not music, not chips or anything, just...
Nobody's going to that
And no
Facebook
crunching
event.
chips.
Exactly.
Not twice. Heather?
Basically, it seemed very, stale at the, like, this was the first time I'd ever heard it last night and today. So it seemed a bit stale in the fact that those jokes are so passe or whatever. They're just so
Well, yeah, we
old.
expect more now, don't we? A
We
little
expect
more.
so much more now, but also I feel like so many comedians got their careers going from that kind of stuff.
Right.
So hearing that stuff, it's just not funny anymore. It's just not funny anymore. I mean, yeah, it could be more clever now, I guess, but I don't know.
I hear you.
It was fine,
I feel
but-
like a lot of the stuff I heard on this is something I might have just heard in the schoolyard. You know,
Yeah.
like they're not layered jokes. A lot of them.
Not at all.
But he's a good joke writer and he's hilarious,
Yes.
and I love his career and I love his movies and stuff. So, but yeah, I didn't know his stand-up career very, very well. I just heard people always talking about raw, but I'd never heard it. So,
Right.
and then we listened to comedians. So anyway, yeah.
All right, cool. Fair enough. Well, that's our show, guys. Big thanks to my guest, Nigel Downer,
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
who you can find seriously if you can find at Second City, right? You still
Yeah,
teach
100%.
there?
Yeah, I still teach there quite often, and you can find me at Bad Dog Theater as well. I do a lot of improv there on the weekends, Fridays, Saturdays, generally. Yeah, man. Check me out on Instagram. I take a lot of fun pictures. I like my pictures. It's very curated. I was a graphic designer in my old back in the
Snooping
day.
tonight.
And that's Nigel_Downer. Yeah, man. Whatever. Tweeting at me is at Nigel Downer. I don't tweet a lot. I retweet a bunch. That's it, man. Holla at your boy. I'm
All right, right on. We also have Heather Sanderson.
Oh. I got.
Where can we find you, Heather?
Oh, I'm a snoop on social media, but I don't actually post or do anything on there. But I'm Heather Sanderson on Facebook.
Where can we
I don't know.
find what you're going to be doing?
_Huxtable on Instagram, which is very taboo. 'cause
Are
my
you
name
serious?
is Heathcliff Huxtable.
That is amazing.
Wow, there's so
Heather
much.
Heathcliff. I don't know. I know it's terrible. It's terrible.
That's hilarious.
And you will see me on the new series, The Umbrella Academy, coming out in 2019.
Yo,
Congratulations. That's
I'm
very
so
cool.
proud of you. That's amazing. I read that book and I could not believe it. Shout out to Gerard Way. I know that one.
Oh yeah.
Because that book is unreal. So I'm ecstatic for
Yeah.
anybody that's a part of that project.
Awesome.
Good for you.
I'm in a
Great.
few episodes. Keep your eyes peeled.
That's great, Heather. Amazing. All right. And please give a hand to my third guest, Mr. Ian McIntyre, friend of the show. We can find you at Mr. Ian.
The internet.
The internet. Look up Ian McIntyre. He's one of the 70,000 Ian McIntyres out there. If you like politics and comedy, you'll like Ian McIntyre. Fair enough?
Probably. Yep.
Yeah. All right, cool. What do you got coming up?
Oh,
Pressure.
I'm gonna get another beer after this.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right, if you want to hang out with with Ian, you can have beer. Cool. Thanks also to my co-producer Matt Ardill. I could not do this without you, sir. To our regular tech Andrea Miller, she's not here, but we've got the lovely Rob Bullets Bartlett. You can find us at CABC Podcast on Twitter. We're also on Facebook, on the internet, comedyalbumbookclub.com, and all your favorite podcast apps. Feel free to drop us a line. Tell us about your favorite comedy albums and suggestions for future guests, topics, albums, etc. This will be our last live show for a while, but this is number 12. We've done a year. Very excited about that, but we'll still be doing podcasts in the studio, so pay attention. We'll be doing more stuff soon. We're going to be doing more interviews, articles, and future episodes. And of course, tonight, as we have done for all the live shows, the proceeds will be going to Covenant House, Canada's largest agency for homeless and at-risk youth. Please remember to subscribe, like, tell your friends, and we'll see you next time. Until then, this is Jason DeLine.
I just want to say
And Nigel
congratulations.
Downer.
But congratulations on 1 year, man. You guys are doing great work. This
Thanks,
is fantastic
buddy.
to you and Matt and the rest of the team.
Glad you
yeah,
enjoyed
man,
it.
congratulations.
We're
So
glad we
thank you.
finally got you on.
One more year. One more year.
And a movie. One more year in a movie. Airhorn, the movie. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Jason DeLine. Thank you for listening to Comedy Album Book Club.
You know how to book flights and hotels. All you're missing is a tool to plan the travel experiences you'll have once you arrive. That's why you need Viator. Book guided tours, activities, excursions, and more in one place to make your trip truly unforgettable. Viator has over 300,000 travel experiences to choose from. Everything from simple tours to extreme adventures and all the niche, interesting stuff in between. So you can plan something that everyone you're traveling with will enjoy. Real traveler reviews give the inside scoop from people who've already been on the experiences you're considering. So you can plan with confidence. Free cancellation helps you plan for the unexpected. And 24/7 customer support means you can travel worry-free. Download the Viator app now and use code Viator10 for 10% off your first booking in the app. Find travel experiences for you. Do more with Viator.
Brighten up your space and save big money at Menards. Accent any area with Patriot Lighting. From under cabinet lighting to string lights, tape lights, and more, we've got a great selection of accent lighting options. Whether you're looking to light up the yard for your next get-together or add a splash of color to your gaming setup, Patriot Lighting has it all. Explore our lighting options and other great deals now at Menards and on Menards.com.
Save